Good morning. Welcome to the second live session of Luxury Management from the School of Hotel and Tourism Management online MicroMaster program. Today we are very grateful and very fortunate to have Mr. Ian Stasinger with us to share his experiences on the luxury brand distribution through the outlet segment. So please allow me to give a few minutes introduction about Ian, who is the speaker for today's session. After 25 years of working experience in the global tourism and the retail industry, Ian has formed his own company in consulting for tourism and retail services and destination marketing, strategy sales and marketing representation, and also the digital services on the global basis. As you can see that Ian has provided consulting services for all these companies. I'm sure there are too many to mention, so we just list some of them here. There are many more I'm sure he has served. What I want to emphasize here is that other than just sort of retail experiences, what is more important is his unique understanding of shopping tourism and also how we can leverage of the tourism industry and through the hotel retail sector. And he also has experiences in creating the UNWTO report in addressing the importance of shopping tourism. Once again, Ian, welcome to our live session for our luxury management course. Well, let's get started. So what we like to do in the following sessions is for Ian and I to share with you some of ideas and concepts how the luxury brands can be distributed through different channels, in which I'm sure outlet is one of them. There are many, there are few others. So I would like to bring Ian on board and then to share his views with us. Ian, please.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I think it is important to recognise that outlet is just one of the strategic distributions channels that luxury and premium brands have. At the very top of the tree when it comes to distribution channels are their own full price stores, which of course all luxury brands would prefer to sell all of their products at full price. They then have their department store and wholesaler channel, which again is a very important full price element to how the brands distribute globally. And then they have their own online sales and other online channels, which I'll talk a little bit more about later. But obviously, online sales in particular through websites and through social media become more and more important. It really depends, though, on some key factors. One is product availability. And product availability is a bit of a conflict for the brands, because obviously by having product available for outlet, it means they have excess product. But that's where outlets are very important to help them actually sell last season and previous season's product at discounted prices. They need to have ease of logistical support, so that means locations that are easy to distribute their product to without adding to the cost. And then the pricing and discount levels, which again is one of the contradictions for luxury brands, that when they distribute through outlets, they have to discount quite heavily.
Right. Well, I'd like to share a little bit with you on the product availability. One of the things people concern most is on the uniqueness and exclusiveness of the products they are, paying for and the services, because it can be very expensive. They don't want many people to own them. When we have a lot of, I would say, when we have some more products available to be distributed at outlets. Is there some kind of conflict of views on here? Would you like to comment on?
I think for one of the things for luxury brands is that their strategy is always to have the size, the colour and the style available of every product they have in every store. And by definition, that means there will always be excess product. Obviously, seasons in the fashion industry are very short. So if they don't sell the product immediately at full price within 3 or 4 months, it means they have to have channels that still add value to their brand, don't devalue the quality of their brand, give them reliable distribution channels, and also bring in still high net worth, relevant customers to buy those products. So it is a conflict, but it's a conflict that the industry actually has to address because it's just a reality.
Right, right. So I understand that. Well, so now we have covered the brand distribution channels for the luxury goods and the services. So let's have a look. What do we mean by outlet? So are there different type of outlets? We see outlets in the city area. We see the outlets in the suburb of the city. And, what are the different definitions of outlet? Can you share?
Yeah. So I think there are three core types of outlet. One is the outlet mall, which is a multi-brand shopping destination. It's often developed out of town because of the space that's required to manage those kind of large estate type operations. Within that multi-brand mall, brands do operate their own stores. They're responsible for hiring their own staff. They're responsible for all day-to-day operations. What the real estate company and developer do is manage the actual site itself. So they provide what we would call the operational support for the brands to operate within their own business. Then what you also have are factory outlets, and there's a lot of confusion between the traditional outlet mall and a factory outlet. But ultimately, a factory outlet is a store that in the most cases will only sell the brand product of the factory, of the production that it's close to.
Right.
So there is a very clear difference between what people still refer to as factory outlet, but really it's more of an outlet mall when you have multi-brands. And then the new player in the game is obviously linked to the internet and to social media. And I've shown on the screen here one good example, which is the Outnet.com. And really that is an outlet mall online. It is multi-brand. It's selling luxury brands at discounted prices, but all online. So what that brings is a global reach that customers really do appreciate. And again, the Outnet.com is a very well-known brand, well-respected brand, and therefore adds value to the luxury brand's actual brand itself.
Well, speaking, I'm very interested in these online shopping experiences for the outlet mall concept, which is very new. And how about these experiences, in-store experiences? When the customer is paying for these luxury brands, it can be quite expensive. And then if we put it online, just like any other shopping experiences, so what is missing here? So consumers' perspective on experiencing, trying different products?
Well, I think that's what the outlet mall concept brings, because people treat it as a destination. They go for half a day or a full day. They enjoy the shopping, they enjoy the restaurants, they enjoy all the entertainment that goes with visiting an outlet mall, very much as you would in a luxury department store. Obviously, the online space can't bring that same level of experience in terms of the touch and the feel of the product and the actual entertainment within a destination. But I think what it does bring is, again, a very reliable, visible distribution channel for the brands that adds value to their own brand equity. And I think that's always the most important thing that brands are thinking about.
Right. Yeah, I guess I'm sure this kind of online outlets probably have taken into consideration the experiential part of the experience is missing. Maybe there's more other part of the online experience can be added.
Yeah.
But just the thought to share.
I think it's a similar experience between people going into a full price store and shopping on the brand website, or going into the outlet mall and shopping on the online outlet space.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Thank you. So let's see what's next. Well, we touched a little bit on this. How brands view the outlet. It's a very mixed feeling. All different brands, I'm sure you mentioned earlier, they have different type of products available in their main stores. And then after a couple of weeks or a couple of months, the seasonal effect came in. So they must have a channel to still create some value instead of nothing. So therefore, the outlet came to play. So how would you look at this? What is your view on how brands, different type of brands, view the outlet operation?
I think I would describe it very simply as a love-hate relationship.
Interesting.
Clearly, most luxury brands, in fact, all brands, whether it's in the fashion industry or in any other industry, any other tourism product, whether it's an airline, a hotel, car rental, whatever the product may be, don't want to discount their product. I mean, that's just the reality of the situation. And particularly in the fashion industry, it's beautiful product. So really, fashion brands or luxury brands really have a very difficult time discounting product between 40 and up to 70% off. But again, as we talked about earlier, it's a critical distribution channel for that out of season, previous season product. So, you know, a lot of luxury brands do look at outlets and consider that it could devalue their brand equity.
Right.
So this is why it's important for outlet operators, outlet landlords, for the want of a better phrase, that they provide and build a real luxury experience for those customers.
Right.
So the customers don't actually feel like they are shopping in outlets. So I think
Right,
that's an important part of what makes an outlet mall successful and relevant to the brands. The other side of the equation is a lot of the outlet operators, and I've worked for one of the biggest in the world. We believe that it introduced many new customers to those luxury brands that may not have visited the full price stores without having tasted the outlet experience first, because it's quite an intimidating prospect going into a full price store in a city centre with a security guard on the door. You're the only customer, there's 8 sales assistants trying to help you, and you've never been into that kind of store before. It's quite intimidating. So outlet provides more of a easy introduction
Brand
to those
awareness,
luxury
probably
brands.
brand awareness creation.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then there is the reality that a very significant percentage of sales come through outlet stores. Luxury brands will never really divulge what that percentage is. But some of the highest producing stores that luxury brands have in the world are in outlet centres. So it's just a reality of the business that they are an important channel. There are a few brands still, particularly Hermes and Chanel, that do not have any outlet stores.
And also LV, if I remember.
And
but
LV as
I
well,
haven't seen
yeah.
any LVs.
Yeah.
In the
So there are a
Yes.
number of stores, a number of brands that just have still not moved into the outlet space, and possibly never will, because their brand equity, they believe, would be diluted by being in the outlet centre. But then you've got the other side where many brands see it as a key part of the strategy and actually run their outlet business almost as a real strategic part of their overall business. And that can involve many different things. And I've put on the screen a couple of examples of Coach and Michael Kors, who have many, many, many outlet stores around the world. Some amazing store fits that you would struggle to differentiate between a full price store and an outlet store. Very exceptional stock levels and a dedicated team of people looking after this segment. And also, as brands, they do produce stock and merchandise that is specifically to be sold through outlet stores. So it's really a real strategic part of their business, not just something they do as a distribution channel.
Yes. Just a couple of points here. So, like the few brands we mentioned earlier, Hermes, Chanel, and LV, they probably up to this moment, as far as you and I know, they haven't had any outlet stores. What is their thinking? So,
I think their thinking is about brand equity. I think this is what it always comes back to. That as soon as their brand was seen in the first outlet store, it would have a negative impact on their brand.
Perception.
Brand
Yes.
perception.
Right.
So
right.
I think that's really what it comes to.
Right.
And at the moment, it would be fair to say that I certainly haven't heard of any plans for any of those brands to move into the outlet segment.
So there are really two different type of brand strategies here. So for those like Hermes and Chanel and LVs, they tend to believe that outlet operation of these brands will definitely affect the brand equity. And so far at this moment, they haven't come up this agreement with outlet operation yet. So I can understand that the perception of the luxury brand is very important. It is how much they sell it may not be exactly how much people perceive. You may sell it, say 30 or 50,000 Hong Kong dollar for a bag. So when people feel so good about it, they're willing to pay more. They probably, this kind of brands, they keep increasing price every year. People still buying.
Yeah.
So that's probably the value of the brand equity. Whereas other brands, as you mentioned here, Coach, Michael Kors, and Gucci, I've seen many of them in outlets, other than those three we mentioned, may feel probably they can generate a large volume of sales. And on top of that, they're building a new clientele. Is that right?
Correct.
So those are probably the other type of operation of the brands believe in. It's sort of different type of school of thought, if I may put it that way.
Yeah, I think that's a very good summary. That for the second group of brands, the Coach, Michael Kors, you mentioned Gucci and others, it is more of a volume business, definitely, and more channels are needed. Yeah, but again, having worked in the luxury outlet segment for many years, I can honestly say that having seen how brands operate and what benefit it can have to their business, I don't think there's any reason to feel like if you're in the correct outlet malls, and I emphasize that very much, being in the correct outlet malls, it can have a really positive effect on your business.
Right. So I'd like to go back to the point you made earlier on the quality of these outlet malls. The experiences created just sort of half day away from the city. It can be very beautifully located in a nice area in the suburb of certain big cities. So then the experiences can be more than just buying. So it's the combination of all the food and beverage and entertainment activities plus a reasonable discounted quality products.
Yes.
It's the holistic experience.
The holistic experience, and it's not just about shopping. If you take somewhere like Bicester Village in the UK, which is probably one of the most famous outlet malls in the world, people don't just visit Bicester Village for shopping. They also visit Oxford to visit Oxford City Centre. They will go to Blenheim Palace. They will make an actual trip to the region rather than just go shopping. So actually it becomes an experience that is about tourism, entertainment and shopping. What that brings to the region is actually increased tourism numbers. So an outlet can have a real positive impact on a tourism area. So if you look at, again, Bicester Village, it moved into a town that was really struggling after a few industrial challenges of businesses closing there. So Bicester Village opened a number of years ago and brought employment, it brought people visiting the town centre, and it's led to a whole regeneration of the area.
So there's a natural, match here. So in order for outlet to be successful, tourism play a very important role.
Very important.
Yeah, so that's a very good point. Okay, thank you. Let's see what we have got here. Wow, interesting. So now I'm sure these outlet malls are located in European countries, in the Americas, and in Asia, particularly in China. Almost all major cities have one or two outlet malls. I'm sure they have different business models.
They do.
So I'm glad that you got this information to share with our learners. So would you like to comment on the business models?
Sure. I've listed on the screen five different examples of companies. These are not the only five in the world by any stretch of the imagination, but the reason that I included them was they're all slightly different in how they operate. So if you take Simon, which is a US-based company, which is one of the largest outlet operators in the world, they have many hundreds of outlet malls and other shopping activities in the US as an example. And what they've done is created this separate product called Simon Shopping Destinations, which is specifically focused on the places where tourists go. So it's more focused on tourists than local consumers. Then you have MacArthurGlen, which is one of the biggest operators across Europe, with a very strong focus in places like Italy, the Netherlands, UK, and so on. Chic Outlet Shopping, which is the brand of value retail, which operates Bicester Village that I previously mentioned. They also operate other famous outlet malls such as La Vallée in Paris and La Roca in Barcelona. And then in China, which is one of the interesting developments when it comes to the outlet industry, you have one of the biggest operators in China called Florentia Village, which is actually an Italian operated company providing real European experience in China to the Chinese consumers. And then you have something slightly different, which is on the right hand side of the screen, which is Metzingen, which is an outlet centre in Germany. It's multi-brand, but actually quite uniquely, it's owned by a luxury brand. So that's quite a different model, because all of the others are owned predominantly by real estate companies. The one on the right is owned by an actual luxury brand. So it's a slightly different model. But there are some very strong similarities in all of the different operators and different companies that I've listed. Most of the major outlet malls are located out of town, usually 50 kilometers plus from the major city centre, and importantly from the full price stores. So the reasons behind that are you need quite a lot of space to build these kind of outlets, and that space is generally not available downtown. And going back to the brands, they are very keen that it is not seen to devalue sales in full price stores. So that distance, the actual physical distance between the city centre and the outlet, is very important. The financial models are so different. There's really no consistent model across the world. But again, I've listed on the screen some of the different elements that could be included: a monthly rent, marketing fee, service fee. Some companies have commission on sales, so it's a win-win situation. So the better the brand does, the better the real estate operator does. So it's really win-win situation. And most companies have a combination of all or some of those fees. So it's quite a complicated financial structure, but those are generally the key elements. Brands tend to be responsible for their own costs of doing the shop fit, hiring the staff, all of the logistics, but quite often outlet operators will provide some sort of capex to really bring in those really sought after brands. There are certain brands that all of the successful outlet malls really desire to have, and attracting those is the key to having a successful business. The landlord or the real estate company tends to be responsible for all of the marketing activity. So, a few elements that the landlord will look after are obviously the real estate itself, the construction, the leasing of the space to the brands, the retail element. But marketing is also important, because that will bring the people, that will drive the sales, that will make the brand successful, and it becomes a continuous circle of success. The margins that outlet companies make do vary quite significantly, but you'll see from the figures on the screen, it's about volume. It's not a hugely individually profitable business. You have to drive volume to have a successful business. And of course, the brands have to play a big part in this by bringing in the right stock, bringing in the right sizes, the right styles that customers will spend, because there are a few different things to the regular retail business. Because if a tourist is visiting an outlet, they will probably only come once in a year. So you have a one-time opportunity to really sell to the customer. So if a customer wants a certain size and you don't have it, they will not come back tomorrow. Okay, so it's a really important part of what the brands bring to the table. And of course the discount, because outlet means value, and value means discount when it comes to customer perception.
Okay, great. Well, you just touched a little bit on the tourists and the locals. So I guess for any outlet business, for the different brands to be successful, there's a good combination from both locals who can be the return customers, whereas the tourists maybe just once or twice a year. So what is a good healthy mix of both local and tourist?
I think the healthy mix would be 50-50. There are very few outlets that really probably achieve that. There's 2 or 3 in the world where 50-50 is achieved. I think what you will see is that often tourists are a lower percentage of the total customer visits, but will spend more. because they are coming on a one-time trip. Whereas, as you said, local customers can come maybe once a month. So what you will see if you do a detailed analysis, probably a tourist coming from China to the UK will spend the same as a local customer, but the local customer will spend maybe that in 10 visits. So the Chinese or the international tourists will spend a large amount of money in that one visit. So I think that's the key difference. But you do need both. There's no doubt about it. You also need a good mix between midweek and weekend business. So this is also a challenge for retail in general, because a huge amount of retail sales come on Saturdays and Sundays, where Sunday opening is allowed, which is most places in the world now. So the Monday to Friday period is very important, and that's where tourists can be super helpful, because tourists are not just restricted to shopping on the weekend.
Okay. Well, just one more point. You mentioned earlier this very ideally we would like to have 50-50 locals and 50 tourists. Then the very important issue here is how this city, are they a major destination? The city itself has to be attractive enough. As you can imagine, the tourists will not just go to certain place just for the outlet shopping. It has to be attractive city, attractive destination associated with it. So I guess that brings, based on your extensive consulting experience in Bali, in China, in Europe, have you seen any successful models being a very good tourist city and have a good mix of locals and the tourists, and then bring the good business eventually?
I think there's a lot of good examples actually, and we've talked about it a little bit through this time. But Bicester Village in the UK, extremely successful, because it's 50 to 60 kilometres from London. It's also within reach of Birmingham, another major city. Clearly, London is a hugely successful tourism destination, the UK as a country and London specifically. It also brings in tourists from all over the world, and that's another important thing, because if one tourism market is having some challenges, it has the ability to be replaced by other arrivals from different countries. So it's not just reliant on one particular market. So that's a very good example. You see somewhere like MacArthur Glen in Serravalle, which is close to Milan, going towards the border of France. So again, it's within easy reach of Milan. It has a huge amount of tourism arrivals into Italy from many, many, many different countries. So I think you do see some very, very good examples of that. And you mentioned Bali. And I think Bali is an interesting example, because there you have a destination that's really on tourism, but also has a lot of people from somewhere like Jakarta who home weekend homes and will actually travel to Jakarta on the weekend. So you're reaching different types of local domestic customers. I think the one different market where this doesn't apply is mainland China, whereas there's been a huge development in outlet centres in mainland China. There's over 400 of them now, and still mainland China relies 95% on domestic Chinese customers. But it is changing ever so slightly. Prices in mainland China are getting more competitive. You can now in major cities get a tax refund. So the attractiveness of foreign customers shopping in China becomes slightly more interesting, but still very focused on the domestic customer.
Right. So yeah, you shared your experience about the Bicester, and then about also the few examples in Italy, and now we come into Asia. So Bali is another good example, because it's a very good tourism destination. It attracts people coming from all over the world. And now moving to China, I guess it is a huge country by itself. The domestic tourism is very well developed. People nowadays are very affordable to be more mobile from one city to another. So you can see the potential coming from these major cities in China, giving the huge volume of domestic travel together with some international tourists, right?
Well, I think China obviously has a huge volume of population, so I think that's very important. Still, even though a lot of Chinese people do travel internationally, the number of trips over 100 million a year, it still means a lot of people, a lot of Chinese consumers do not travel out of China.
Right.
So I think what Outlet in China offers is those customers who do not travel internationally access to these products at an
Right,
affordable price. It also means that those people traveling to Europe or North America or other destinations on their leisure holidays, when they come home, can get that same sort of outlet experience.
Right.
And also it gives people in second, third and fourth tier cities in China access to brands and products that they might not normally have access to.
It looks quite promising, the
Yes.
outlet business and distributing of luxury brands through those outlets in China. Okay, so let's move on to see. Oh, here you got some, I guess we mentioned a little bit, but you can still feel free to comment on. There are some of the examples you can give in terms of successful outlets. What do you mean by successful?
So as successful is defined by obviously the sales that go through these malls. It's the quality of the brands that have committed to be there for long periods of time. And I would also say they are kind of iconic names when it comes to shopping tourism. Everybody knows Bicester Village. Everybody knows La Vallée Village. Everybody knows Woodbury Common in New York. Everybody knows Gotemba in Japan. Why do they know Gotemba? Obviously because of Gotemba, but also because it's at the bottom of Mount Fuji, which is a unique experience that you can go shopping and visit Mount Fuji all in the same day. So I think there's a few common themes of these outlets that are on this screen. One is they have all learnt very successfully how to attract volumes, big volumes of customers, and in particular the mainland Chinese customer. All of them have a very strong success brand awareness level with the mainland Chinese customer. They all attract excellent brands, and they've all become part of the tourism destination, the wider tourism destination, whether it's the country or the region or the city that they are close to. It's one of the iconic top 10 things to do.
Right. So, well, speaking of Chinese outbound travel, which we will cover later, so I'll just still get you to comment on. Here we have a slides. What makes I'm sure you mentioned a few.
I think I've mentioned all of them.
So anything else you want to add? Yeah.
I don't think so. I think it's pretty self-explanatory that you have to have excellent locations, you've got to have excellent transportation links, ease of parking, accessibility. You've got to have close proximity to other inbound tourism destinations and attractions. And you've got to offer top quality services, not just shopping. You've got to turn it into something that's really a full day of entertainment.
Great. Well, now let's take a look about, I guess we have covered extensively on the supply side of the tourism industry. Now let's look at the demand side. So what is the development of global luxury market? What is your views on this? So I guess travel is something very, very luxury by itself. People will not travel unless they have satisfied their own basic needs, meaning travel itself can be a luxury experience. And then that travel luxury experience, depending on how affordable they are, I guess the growth of the GDP and economic development in any countries in relation to their residents to travel behavior would be positively correlated. Meaning the higher the income, the more likely people will travel, especially for the long haul travel going to Europe, America, or any overseas destinations. Is now the very it's quite an expensive experience to buy. Now I have got this data here. It seems that the Chinese market is booming.
Yes.
And whereas the Japanese market used to play a very important role in overseas shopping. Now we listed these few markets. You can see that the Japanese market is declining, whereas the Chinese market, it seems like increasing, like in the global, luxury purchasing, So would you like to comment on this?
Well, I think the Chinese market is definitely booming. I think it's well recognized that particularly Europe, North America, Japan, Korea, Hong Kong, other markets in Asia Pacific for the last 10 years have been hugely reliant on the mainland Chinese market, and it drives a huge amount of the international sales that go on in the outlet segment.
Right.
If you look at Europe, there's figures are tracked independently by tax refund companies such as Global Blue and Premier Tax Free. It's no exaggeration to say that China represents 50% of all the sales that happen in Europe. So it's clearly a hugely important market. I think what's changed in the last few years with the Chinese market is the way that people travel. No longer is it people being bussed in on a tour, spending 2 hours running around, buying crazy amounts of stuff. It's now the independent traveller who wants to be visiting a real high quality destination, enjoy all the same entertainment facilities that any other shopper would. And they're not just now looking for the traditional luxury brands. They're now, when they're traveling, looking for the niche luxury brands that come exclusively from that country that they're visiting. So it's kind of immersing themselves in the whole experience of the country that they're traveling to. But it doesn't matter how you slice the figures and look at them, China is a critical market, not just for outlet, but for luxury brands in general.
So
I think. Sorry. And I think what you see is a couple of other interesting markets that are coming along behind as the next sort of developing markets. Certainly, outbound travel from Indonesia is increasing a lot, and the Indonesian market's very interesting. And in the Middle East, you've got a very new and emerging market, which is Iran, which obviously for many, many years, travel from Iran has been quite difficult. So what you have in a country like that, a little bit like you had with China 20 years ago, you've got this pent-up demand of people wanting to purchase brands, luxury brands, and goods that they haven't had accessibility to for many, many years.
Well, so I totally agree with you. No matter it's inbound, outbound, domestic, because of this huge population base China has, then even a small percentage of people traveling, that means millions of people in certain destinations. Up to this moment, according to our research, it's only less than 5% of people coming from China traveling overseas. Imagine if we increase another 5%, this is how the whole world will look like.
A little bit scary.
It is. So now if everywhere we go, we heard a lot of Chinese-speaking tourists. Now that is only less than 5% of the population. Imagine if there's a few percentage increase or 5, then we really have a lot of happy issues to look after, do we?
Well, there's a lot of happy issues, certainly if you're in the tourism industry. As we know, there's also challenges that go with that volume of tourists coming from any country going to any country. So, I recently visited the northern part of Spain on holiday, the Basque Country, which was very interesting. Because there was not many Chinese tourists there. So it's quite an undiscovered area. We were in Bilbao and San Sebastian, which for Europeans are quite iconic tourism destinations. There was very few Chinese tourists there. And yet, I still saw signs on the street, on lampposts and so on, saying tourists go home. Because you have certain cities like San Sebastian, that it doesn't matter whether it's Chinese or tourists coming from other markets, that city is overrun with tourists. So I think in a general tourism conversation, it's finding a balance between benefits of tourism, but also the negatives. If your infrastructure and your city feels overrun by tourists, it really doesn't matter if it's Chinese or anybody else. You feel like you're losing control of the city. So that was an interesting example of the benefits of tourism, because San Sebastian would not be the city it is today without tourists, but also the perceived negative side of tourism.
So in tourism sense, we talk about this host and the tourist guest relationships. But by the end of the day, it's the sustainability of the destination. Any destination is overused, it will be subject to the sustainable development. So I guess that balance between the host and the guest, a very important issue to always be in mind when we develop the tourism industry.